Hello and welcome to another video here at the End Hockey channel. Today we've got a few things to discuss, including a signing over in Columbus, some more injury updates with teams like the Ducks, the Sharks, and the Oilers, some trade rumors involving the Winnipeg Jets and the Edmonton Oilers. We'll go to all of that coming up right now. Hello and welcome to another video here. Today I'll kick things off with a signing that happened recently with the Columbus Blue Jackets, as they signed prospect James Malatesta to a 3-year entry-level contract that will carry an average annual value of $870,000. Now, Malatesta was a 5th-round pick in the 2021 draft and has done quite good since being drafted by the Jackets. He's been playing in the QMJHL over the past few years. Actually had quite a decent season last year, putting up 53 points in 68 games as a winger in the QMJHL, and he's really done well this year too, putting up 22 goals and 34 points in 26 games to this point in the QMJHL. So Malatesta is doing really good. He seems like he could be a good top 9 winger for the Blue Jackets in a couple of years' time. He's still probably going to have to go maybe a year or two in the minors, maybe one more year of juniors, but still he's going to have to develop for a little bit longer. But in the future, I could see him being a good third, second pair winger for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He looks like he can be a good point-producing forward, and he looks like he could be a good steal for the Blue Jackets, who got them in the 5th round. So good job for the Jackets to sign him. He's playing really well right now, so it's good to get him on the contract. And while I don't think he has too much hope to make the NHL in the next year or two, maybe 2 to 3 years down the road, he probably will be challenging for an NHL roster spot. But getting him signed was the first part of that, so that's good on the Jackets to get him locked up for the next 3 years. Next, we're going over to the injury updates, as there is a few injury updates I do want to talk about. So starting with the Anaheim Ducks, they have had some pretty bad news and some good news on the injury front, as the Anaheim Ducks have placed John Klingberg and Isaac Lundstrom on injury reserve, but were able to activate Max Comtois off of injury reserve. Now, for the Ducks, Klingberg is one of their best defensemen. With Drysdale most likely for the season, Klingberg was probably their best defenseman and most likely their most offensive defenseman. So losing him to IR, not ideal. I think Klingberg will be back soon, and he shouldn't hopefully miss too many games. He was an unhealthy scratch for a few games before being placed on injury reserve, so he has been out for about a week and a half. So not good for the Ducks, but hopefully he can come back. He's a big part of this Ducks blue line. He was a big offseason acquisition. With the Ducks not trending to be a playoff team this year, he will probably be a big trade chip around the deadline. So him getting healthy will be important for the Ducks and Klingberg to hopefully show the league that he's still a really good NHL player and that he can be traded to like a contender at the deadline. And on top of that, to give the Ducks a really good haul. So losing Klingberg is not a really good situation for them, and hopefully he can return soon. But just losing another defenseman onto injury reserve is not a good situation for the Ducks, because they have lost so many defensemen to injuries this year, and hopefully he can get back soon. As for Isaac Lundstrom, he has missed a few games as well due to being in an unhealthy scratch and was recently placed on injury reserve. He's probably going to miss a few weeks due to his injury. Lundstrom's actually been a really good third-line center for the Ducks this year, consistently playing third-line minutes. I think he's really rounding out into a really good middle six forward right now. Maybe not one of the best forwards the Ducks have, but a pretty good one. And I think if he can continue to improve his game and play well, he should be able to continue to be a middle six forward for the Ducks. I think that Lundstrom is probably going to be a key piece of this Ducks future. And I think that if Lundstrom can get healthy as fast as he can, he probably shouldn't miss too much time, a week or two. But hopefully Lundstrom is not out for too much longer and he can get back, because missing their third-line center is a pretty big blow to the Ducks. I know they're not playing too well this year and probably aren't looking for too many wins, but still, losing a good young center like that is not ideal, so hopefully he can get back soon. But on the flip side, they were able to activate Max Comtois off of injury reserve. Now, he was injured for a while before being placed on injury reserve, so getting him back was pretty good. He did start to pick up his pace point-wise before he got injured, so getting him back is good. I think he should once again go into a bottom six role with the Ducks and continue to try and produce. I know we've talked about him being possible trade chip, and I still think that's a very likely possibility, either now or in the offseason, because he's an RFA, and I'm not sure if the Ducks really wanted to resign him. but hopefully he can continue to be a good producing forward. He can show that he still has some potential. He was the Ducks' leading goal scorer 2 seasons ago, so hopefully he can show that he still has some of that point-producing potential left in his game, and that he can help the Ducks right now with their offense being a bit lackluster this year. And hopefully a bump in production leads to him possibly being moved either to the trade line or the offseason. But getting Contra back is really good, especially with the loss of Lundstrom. And losing Klingberg is not too ideal for the Ducks. But hopefully Klingberg and Lundstrom can get back soon. Contra can help fill in a bomb six role for now with Lundstrom out. And hopefully the Ducks are able to get some more wins, as they are dead last in the NHL and really do need some more wins. As for the Edmonton Oilers, they had both good and bad news, as they placed Warren Foegele on injury reserve as he has been injured, but they were able to activate Kailer Yamamoto. Now, Yamamoto has had a very tough time staying healthy this year. I know he's been in and out of the lineup consistently due to an injury, but with him being healthy now, it does seem like he's going to get a top six role and continue to be a good point-producing forward. I know he's played tons of top six minutes, mostly with Draisaitl over the last few years, and he's done quite well with producing with Draisaitl. So I know losing him and Kane for the last few weeks had been really hard on the Oilers. So hopefully with Yamamoto back, he can continue to produce well and show that he can still be a good top 6 point producing forward for the Oilers. And hopefully he can show that he still is a top 6 forward and that he deserves top 6 minutes. So getting Yamamoto back is huge. It's another good top 6 forward. He's not going to be able to completely help with the production that was lost when Kane got injured, but he should be able to help this offense be a little bit more dynamic. So I know the McDavid and Draisaitl are still there, so they're pretty dynamic, but getting some more depth scoring is key, and Yamamoto is going to be a big part of that. So good to get Yamamoto back. On the flip side, Foegele is going to be placed on IR and miss some time. Foegele was a bomb 6 forward for most of the season. He had missed the last few games due to the injury, so him being placed on IR is not too surprising. But losing Foegele to IR is losing another healthy body. I think that Fogel's still a good bomb 6 forward, probably a third liner. I know the Oilers have cap problems and have been looking to move him since the offseason, but he's still a really good forward. You know, he's not producing at the absolute best rate he could be, but he's still a good point producing forward. So losing him to injuries is not good. Like I said, they already have McLeod out and Evander Kane, so losing another healthy body is not ideal. I mean, this team has cap problems, and they also don't have too many good forwards that can step in. I think in Fogel's case, they could probably step in and play a bomb 6 role. They do have a few forwards who could do that, but with Kane and McLeod also out, they've lost like 3 of their top 12 forwards right now. So losing Foegele is not ideal, but hopefully Foegele can get back into game action and be a productive bomb 6 forward for the Oilers. Now over to the Vancouver Canucks, as they were able to activate Jack Studnicka off of injury reserve, but did play Thatcher Demko on IR. Now for Studnicka, he's a good bomb 6 forward. He was acquired in season a few weeks ago, probably around a month ago, by the Vancouver Canucks from the Boston Bruins. And he had played a few good games before being placed on injury reserve. But with the Canucks' depth at the forward group, he's basically playing on the 4th line. So not an ideal position for Studnicka. I know at once he was a top-end prospect for the Bruins, but he hasn't been able to really get much at the NHL level. So not really ideal for him. But getting another healthy body is good for the Canucks. I know they've used a few AHL players because they have been running into injuries. So getting Studnicka back is good. He'll be a good bomb 6 forward. He should be able to help with some more depth scoring. I do think he can still be a good scoring forward. And I think that if there were some other injuries, he could easily step into like a 3rd line role. But definitely getting Studnicka back is a big improvement for the Canucks bomb 6. And hopefully he can help this team win some games. As for Demko, he's going to miss about 6 weeks due to the injury. And that's not really good news. The Canucks have done well as of late, but they're still not doing overly fantastic. I know they had a couple of bad losses last weekend, and now they've won a couple games in overtime, so not doing too well. But losing Demko is not going to be good for them. I know he hadn't been playing well this year and was losing some of the starts to backup goalie Spencer Martin, but still, he's their starting goaltender, and losing a starting goaltender is not good. I do think Demko can still turn around and be a good goalie this year. I know that the goaltending and defense has really been hurting the Canucks, but I still think Demko's a good goalie, and losing him for the foreseeable future is not good. So they're going to have to go with the tandem of most likely Spencer Martin and Colin Delia for the next little while. Delia is an okay backup, and Martin's been playing actually quite well, even though the Canucks have not done too well this year. So I think they'll be okay in goaltending for now, but losing Demko for 6 weeks is bad. So Demko being placed on IR is not surprising given his timeline, but it's a big blow to the Vancouver Canucks, and a team who has been playing well lately. Losing their starting goaltender is not going to be good for them. Over in San Jose, they were able to just make a few depth moves on the injury front, as they were able to activate fourth-line center Nico Sturm off of injury reserve, but did place depth forward Matt Nieto on injury reserve. So for Sturm, he's a good fourth-line center. He's done quite well after signing his 3-year contract in the offseason with the San Jose Sharks. Not too bad of a forward, but he has missed the last few weeks on injury reserve, so he's probably going to need a little bit of time to get up to speed. But I do think that Sturm should be able to be a good fourth-line center for the Sharks. I know that they've had a lot of good depth this year. They haven't won too many games, but a lot of their depth players have looked at least reasonably good, so I think Sturm can continue to help that, give them some more secondary scoring, and I think that the Sharks will definitely need it with the way that their depth has been playing this year. But for Matt Nieto, he's actually doing quite well. He's in the final year of his contract. He's been playing with the middle six role due to some injuries that have happened and lack of depth on this Sharks team. So Nieto's actually done quite well in like a second, third line role. But I don't think that that's completely sustainable. I do think he could be easily an option at the trade deadline to be moved, especially with the Sharks not doing too well this year. So definitely him being placed in IR is not good. I know it's one of the Sharks' top 9 forwards right now, so as good as it is to get Sturm back, it is really bad to lose Nieto. So hopefully Nieto can come back soon and continue to play well for the Sharks. I think he's still a good middle six forward for the Sharks, and hopefully he can come back soon. So getting Sturm back is good. It's going to help their depth a little bit. Hopefully he can get some scoring in for the Sharks, as that secondary scoring hasn't been too good this year. But losing Matt Nieto, who's been a good top 6 forward this year, is bad for the Sharks. So hopefully Nieto can come back soon and help the Sharks, as the Sharks have not done overly well this year. Over in Philadelphia, they also had an activation and a placement on injury reserve, as they were able to activate James Van Riemsdyk off of injury reserve, but did place Tanner Laczynski on IR. Now, for JVR, he started the season off quite well, was one of the better players in the final year of their deals, and was doing quite well, but then he had an injury and he's missed the past month and a half due to an injury. So getting him back is good. I still think with the Flyers not doing overly well this year, that James Van Riemsdyk could be a trade chip at the trade deadline. I know his contract's not best, and even if the Flyers were to retain half of his salary, he would still be moved for $3.5 million, which is pretty bad for a middle-six forward. But I think if there was a team who could find a cap space for him, he could definitely do well. I know that he was a pretty good point-producing player earlier in the year. I think he should be getting right back into game action as like a middle six forward for the Flyers. Continue to help some of those younger players and be a leader on the Flyers team, and continue to put up some points and show that he's still a good point-producing forward, goal-scoring forward, and that he could be moved at the deadline. So getting James Van Riemsdyk back is good, and it's going to give them another healthy body on the forward group. But they did place Tanner Laczynski on injury reserve. Now, Laczynski went down in the last game for the Flyers due to an injury, and he's probably going to miss the next week or two due to an injury, so not ideal. Now, Laczynski is more of a bottom six forward. I still think he could some time in the AHL, so I don't think it's too bad that he's been placed on injury reserve. I think the trade-off that Laczynski's now gone, but JVR's back, is a lot better for JVR to come back. But Laczynski has actually put up some goals and done an okay job. He's split time between the NHL and the AHL this year, so definitely a pretty bad loss to the Flyers' depth. I mean, having James Van Riemsdyk is good, but losing another healthy body is not too ideal. So hopefully Laczynski can get back soon. I think that he should be able to still be a good bottom six forward when he is able to get back, and he should be able to help this Flyers team with some depth scoring. But getting James Van Riemsdyk back is the bigger news for the Flyers, and I'm sure he's going to be able to help with some of the scoring on the Flyers team right away. And lastly, here is the Nashville Predators, as they placed for Ryan McDonagh on injury reserve, and they are going to miss him for the next few weeks due to an injury. Now, McDonagh had been playing with the Preds either on the third pair as the third left shot defenseman or on the top pair with Roman Josi more recently. So losing him is going to be pretty bad. Nashville acquired him in the offseason. He was one of their big offseason additions. So losing him is not too good. He's done quite well. He hasn't been putting up too many points, but he has been a good defenseman for the Preds. Nashville's doing pretty well, keeping in the playoff race right now. So losing him is going to be a big blow to this team. I know that this team has guys like Josi and Ekholm and Fabro, but their depth is a little bit lacking, in my opinion, on the defensive side. So losing a big-time contributor and minute eater like Ryan McDonagh is not going to be good for them, and hopefully they can overcome this. I don't think he should be out too long. Probably around the Christmas break would be my guess, maybe a little bit earlier. But hopefully he can get back into game action soon. I think Nashville will definitely miss him for the games that they don't have him in there. And I think that they're going to have to call upon their depth as much as they can over this tough time for Nashville. But hopefully McDonagh can get back into game action soon. Hopefully he's not out for too long. As Nashville's done okay this year, they're going to need as many healthy bodies as they can get to try and get back in this playoff race. So hopefully McDonagh can get back and help this Predators team. Now that's all the trade updates I want to talk about today. Now over to the trade rumor part of the video. I'll start with the Edmonton Oilers, as they have not done overly fantastic this year. Last year they were second in the division. They did quite well. I'm pretty sure they hit over 100 points last year. And McDavid and Draisaitl were a big part of that. They were able to get out of the first two rounds, being LA and Calgary, before running into Colorado, and did quite well. But this team has been really inconsistent this year. They're in a playoff spot, so they're not doing bad. And they're still ahead of Calgary. They have games in hand over LA, and they're close to them, so they're not doing too bad, but they have a lot of inconsistencies this year. Their goaltending tandem is not being the best. I know they signed Jack Campbell and promoted Skinner to backup to be a good tandem, and did a completely new tandem this year from the Smith and Koskinen tandem that was last year. And I think it hasn't been the best, but I think they can still be a good tandem. But that defense has not done well this year. If you look at last year, the right side is basically the same. You have Bouchard, Barrie, and Ceci on the right side, which I don't think is a bad right side. Bouchard's probably a top four defenseman right now. Maybe not a top line minute eater, but a good top four defenseman. And Ceci and Barrie can play top line minutes if need be, and second or third pair minutes as well. So I think that's really good. But I think the loss of Duncan Keith, who they had last year, they acquired him last year's offseason, had him last year during their playoff run, and then he retired this past offseason, and they haven't replaced him. So they've really been relying a lot on Brett Kulak, who was an in-season trade deadline acquisition last year, who they extended, and Nurse on the left side, and then they've been rotating some young guys like Yamelin, like Murray, like Broberg. They've rotated a few of these guys in there, but I don't think that that's the best options for them. I think the best option for them is probably playing Kulak as a third pair defenseman and getting another top four left shot defenseman. And it does seem like the Oilers are interested in trying to acquire another defenseman. I know we also talked about them trying to be interested in like a bomb six forward who has some grit to his game. So maybe they also want to add another top four defenseman now. They've been linked to a lot of their top end defensemen that have been in trade rumors this year. I know they were interested in Chychrun late last year. There have been some mentions in the offseason and earlier this year. There's been some talk recently about maybe them being interested in Erik Karlsson. I know that they were interested in signing John Klingberg last year, and there could still be interest in Klingberg right now. So they have a lot of interest in some of the bigger name defensemen. And I do think it's possible they could end up acquiring one of these guys, but I think that the cap is just working against them. They don't have much cap space, and they would have to move out of contract to acquire someone. I don't see a team like San Jose retaining a whole bunch of Karlsson's $11.5 million. And even if the Ducks were to retain like 50% off of Klingberg's contract in a trade, it would still be $3.5, which would be pretty difficult for the Oilers to take on. So I really do think they could use a major upgrade on the defensive end, especially if they're going to make the playoffs this year. I think that if they were to run into a team like a Vegas or a Dallas, or a team who can really score on them, they may have some problems. So I think that they definitely need a defensive upgrade. If they can make the cap work, then I think they should definitely be in the conversations for a guy like Karlsson or Klingberg or Chychrun. But with their cap the way they are, they may have to go with a more lower end addition. And I think that some teams like the LA Kings or the Winnipeg Jets, who we'll talk about in a second, or the Pittsburgh Penguins could be trade partners for the Oilers. They all have a really amazing amount of defensemen, and they could stand to lose one and trade one away. I know for the Jets, they have guys like Heinola and DeMello and Dillon. I know that some of those guys are a little bit more expensive than others, but those three could be a trade block. I know a guy like Pierre-Olivier Joseph or Marcus Peterson for the Penguins could be on the trade block. I also know that the Kings have a good right side, and that they could be moving Sean Walker, maybe, who's been in and out of the lineup for the Kings this season. So I do think there's some options out there for the Oilers. I think a guy like Walker or Joseph could probably come in and play third pair minutes on the left side. I know Walker's more of a righty, but he has played some left side this year. So I do think that the Oilers have some options out there, whether it be going after one of the top end players like Karlsson, Klingberg, Chychrun, or going after a team who could be looking to move a defenseman like a Winnipeg, Pittsburgh, or LA. I do think either are possibilities, but definitely keep an eye on the Oilers. I do think they are heavily looking into trying to acquire a defenseman, as their younger guys like Broberg just haven't been able to really stick in the NHL, do a good job on the third pair, and I think that getting another defenseman who could play third, maybe second pair minutes would be a great addition for the Oilers and maybe help this team get back into the playoff race. And finally here with the Winnipeg Jets. Now, the Jets have done a pretty good job this year. They're currently the Central Division leaders with 33 points in 24 games, having the tiebreaker over the Dallas Stars. Now, this team has done really well on the defensive end and offensively. Hellebuyck's had one hell of a season, but I think they could use another forward. If you look at their forward group right now, they're playing with guys like Manalainen or Gagne or Fajalbi on the second line, which I don't think is really ideal. When their full lineup is healthy, they have a really good top six. They have guys like Ehlers, Scheifele, Perfetti, Connor, Wheeler, Dubois, so they have a really good top six, but Ehlers has missed the entirety of the season so far due to an injury, and he's probably still going to miss a little bit of time. Mason Appleton's missed the last few weeks due to an injury, so they are really banged up on the forward group, and I could see them try and acquire a forward. I think that even before these two guys were injured, they could have used a forward. I think that this forward group is okay, but their bottom six is a little bit lacking, so going out and acquiring a forward would be probably a smart move for the Winnipeg Jets. I think that they have a ton of defensemen. As I said, you probably keep in Morrissey and Pionk. Schmidt's probably not going to be moved because of his contract, and they have good young guys like Sandberg and Stanley, who's also out right now, who could probably still be good there. But I think that if they were to move a defenseman, it would probably be one of DeMello, Dillon, or Heinola. I know Heinola's been a little frustrated as of late that he's not getting much playing time right now on the NHL level. So if they're not going to move anyone off of their top six, they may have to move Heinola. But if they were to move a guy like DeMello or Dillon off of their lineup, they could easily probably slot Heinola into the third pair. So definitely think that one of those three could be used to maybe acquire a forward. I think we could be looking at a team like the Montreal Canadiens, the Florida Panthers, Vancouver Canucks, San Jose Sharks, or Chicago Blackhawks as possible trade options. I know Blackhawks probably later into the season, but they have a few good forwards like Athanasiou and Domi, and maybe even Jonathan Taves, who are good players in the final year of their deals, who I think could help the Winnipeg Jets this year. So probably not right now, but maybe closer around February, maybe the Jets go after one of these guys. I think that the Hawks and Jets could hook up on a trade. I think that with the way like Athanasiou, Domi, and Taves have played this year, I don't think they'll have the assets to go after Kane. But I think if they were able to go after Athanasiou, Taves, Domi, I think the Jets could do that. I think the Jets would definitely let middle six forward in the final year of their deal. Another team could be the Montreal Canadiens. We know they've been looking to move it forward. I think Winnipeg could end up being a destination for a guy like Dadonov or Drouin or Hoffman. Those have been the three guys who have been mainly rumored to be on the move by the Montreal Canadiens, and I think that the Jets might be able to take one on. I think that if they were to move a good defenseman, maybe a more veteran-y type player like a Dillon or maybe a DeMello, maybe that works for the Canadiens, and there'll probably have to be some other things in there, but I do think that the Canadiens could be an option. We know that Vancouver may be shopping Brock Besser right now. We know that Garland's been in the mix for possibly being traded, so the Canucks have a few middle six options I do think that the Jets could be interested in. I know these guys are more long-term options than just the short-term guys in Chicago and Montreal, but I do think they could use a little bit of middle six help. So maybe acquiring a guy like Besser or Garland would be a good move for them. Over in San Jose, we know they're open for business. I don't think they have the assets to take Meyer, and they don't see the appetite to take a guy like Couture. But a depth player like a Nick Bonino or a Matt Nieto or someone like that might be a good move for the Jets. I mean, these two are both in the final year of their deals. They're not making too much money, and they'd be good depth pieces for the Jets team. So I could see those two as the Jets possibly being interested. And on top of that, you also have the Florida Panthers. Now, it's probably not right now. We know that Hornqvist and Duclair's on LTIR, so their cap situation's good right now. But when both those two guys come back in the new year, you're probably going to have to see the Florida Panthers make some sort of a move to free up cap space. And the Jets do have some cap space, so acquiring a guy like a Duclair or a Bennett or a Hornqvist, one of those guys who could wind up being a good middle six forward for the Winnipeg Jets, may make sense. I just think that if the Panthers were forced into a move where they had to move one of their forwards due to the cap problems, the Jets may be one of the teams who could swoop in and take one of those guys from the Panthers. So I definitely think there are some options out there, but with the Jets' enormous amount of good depth on the defensive end, they could use one of those guys to acquire a forward, and especially with guys like Ehlers and Appleton being out right now, it makes a move on the forward end all the more likely. So definitely keep an eye out on the Jets' forward situation. I would like to hear what you think. Do you think the Jets making a forward acquisition would be a smart move? And if so, who do you think the Jets would most likely want to acquire? Now that's all I want to talk about today. Remember to like this video and subscribe. I also do a blog, which I will leave a link to in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for next week's video. See you guys soon.